Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to the channel. In this video, I'm going to be working with the SculptFun iCube, and I've got a jig system that, this is not my machine, it's my friend Mike from the Lightburn forum, and he came up with this jig system that goes in the SculptFun iCube, and we're going to show you how it works, how to make it, and just go on from there. Let's just jump right into showing you the system and moving on. So we'll start with, we have this wooden jig fixture that he made, and it fits very, very snugly, nicely right inside the opening of the bottom of the machine. And then with that, you have other adapters that you place into it, and he's got them keyed here to where you have to mark on the top corner, so it's always in the right orientation. You have different items that sit inside there. And then that allows you to set it up in Lightburn with your jig and using absolute coordinates, so that every time you make whatever you're making, it always goes back to the same location. So some of the things that he has a jig for some small pens, some of different shaped dog tags, more different, just these are all just the dog bone style. This is for a puzzle that he has that you can engrave the child's name on the top on this puzzle piece if an elephant head. A small jig for business cards, and also for some keychains. So, and you can use your imagination and create your own jig for whatever materials you work with to go in here very quickly and simply. So that's the basics of how this system works. I'm going to get into Lightburn and show it in action a little bit. So it's been a few days since Mikey was here with the machine, but I'm going to show you in Lightburn how to go about actually producing this jig now and how to go about using it. So first off, the main part of the fixture that sits inside of the frame of the iCube, you cannot make on the iCube because it's larger than the cutting capacity of that machine. So you're going to need either a larger laser to cut it in, or you can cut the plywood out using a table saw or a hand saw or a band saw. Anything that you can make a square straight edge piece, you can use for that. But here's the basic design of the fixture. This is the bottom piece, and these pieces are 189 millimeters by 150 millimeters. That's the dimensions, 189 by 150. See it right here. And this part here is the base layer. There's two layers of 1/8 inch plywood or 3 millimeter that will stack together. And when they stack together, this one actually goes on the bottom, and you see these two round holes. Those are just air relief holes, so that when you put your little plates in, they don't get suctioned to the two pieces, just to help them come apart easier. So if you have a laser and material that's, because they're 150 millimeters, you need something that's a little over 300 millimeters to get two of them on. So if you can get two at one shot, great. If not, cut them individually. And what I'm going to suggest, I mean, there's a couple different ways you can do this. This is the bottom layer is just a simple rectangle with two circles cut out of it. The top layer is the same size rectangle, 189 by 150, and it has the fixture holding section in it, and also a reference mark and just some text to help you with aligning things and for future usage. So what I'm going to suggest, if you're using a laser, you can cut this all in one shot, or, and this is what I would recommend doing, don't cut this part. Delete that. I have another file that shows that. Delete that out, and then just cut the outer part and put the text on it. Then set this inside of your iCube and cut this piece out with the iCube itself. That way it's guaranteed to be at your 0, position. So, or if you're cutting this on a table saw or some other method of cutting it, same thing. You won't be able to cut this center section out, but you can cut this inside your iCube. You can sit this inside the opening, prop it up on something so that you can cut through it. and I'll show you that file as well. But basically, this is just a 101. Let's see, yeah. So here's that piece. I've set it up on the iCube device. So here's that piece. It's 101.6, I think it is. And these are just finger holes to help you get the plates out. So if you set the frame inside the machine frame, prop it up on something so that you can make the cutout, and then place this with using absolute coordinates, and that is imperative with the rest of the system, is using absolute coordinates. So use absolute coordinates with that top layer in place. You can cut this piece out, and then that will be exactly at your 0, 0 point right down here on the bottom. Everything else is reliant upon that. So here's those two pieces cut together. You see here's the holes in the back side, and it's just the two pieces glued. And then here's one of the plates that I cut out. You see how it's got the marker, and you slide them together and line them up, and that's where your jig works. Now I'm going to suggest strongly that you take the top piece and cut a second one, or maybe even a third or a fourth, but cut a second one. And then what I did was I just put some scraps along the back to give me a ledge that I can sit the plate in. And when I cut it out, here I've got the keychain, and when I cut it out, there's holes. They're not going to burn up. If you try and cut that piece, on here, you're going to destroy the bottom layer of that, and you need that bottom layer for your key fobs to rest on. So if you have a duplicate copy, and like I say, just glue some scraps on. It doesn't need to be anything important. And you see here it overhangs enough that it did actually burn through that a little bit when I cut the key fobs out. In fact, I can break those pieces off because they cut all the way through. So, but with the key fob, with that in place, when you cut it, most of it just fell right out through the hole. So I would use this one for cutting your templates out, for cutting your plates, and then use this one for actually running the job, because that'll support anything you place in there. You know, if we place this here, the key fobs will rest on the back plate and they'll sit nice and flat. But if you try and do the key fobs on here, they're just going to fall through and sit down too low. Just a suggestion for you. And when I did cut these out, I did have to make a little kerf adjustment on them because they were exact same size, and you know, when you cut something away it's the same size, it's going to remove material on both sides of it. So you do have to make a kerf adjustment. So you'll need to figure out on your machine how much that kerf adjustment needs to be to get it to where they fit just nicely. And then over here he has the jig for the little bamboo pens that he purchases. Now there again, the jig, because the pens are bigger than the working area, the jig has to be bigger than the working area. So he's cut it out on a separate machine, which he has a few machines, a couple larger ones, and also the little iCube. So you cut this out, and then when you put it together, you align this bottom edge with the bottom edge of the plate that you're putting in. That'll keep it square and at the zero line, and you just have to figure out where your left to right positioning needs to be to make it work out for you. So let's move on to the rest of the jig system. All right, we already talked about this. This is the actual cutout in the top plate. Let me open up. So this is just the square. This is the base for the plates that you're going to put in to your system. And the size of this is 101.6 millimeters square. In the top left corner, you engrave a mark, and then you can cut out a whole bunch of these. If you only have the iCube, you can cut a bunch of these out on the iCube one at a time. If you have a larger gantry laser, you can cut maybe 9 at a time on a 12 by 12 sheet, or whatever size material you have. So you can cut as many as you can get out of one piece of material. What I would recommend though is do one and see how it fits, you may need to add a kerf offset to this plate to get it to fit just right. Because you don't want it to have slop in it. You want it to fit in there nicely. You need a little bit of movement so that you can get it in and out, but other than that, you don't want to have it sliding around. And he had experimented with purchasing from Amazon some of the 4-inch squares, and they were too inconsistent in their sizes. Some would work, some would be too tight to fit in, some would be sloppy. So he just went to creating his own shapes to do this. So this is your basic template insert. Cut as many of them as you think you need, and then cut some more. But only after checking if you need to do a kerf offset first, so they fit nice. Now let's move on to one of the other. Well, let's look at the bamboo pens first. Okay. So we have here this line. This is a tool layer. Like I say, he cut out. This is made specific for some bamboo pens that he has, and you can use this to jig up anything you want that'll fit on your laser. So he made this where it'll do 5 pens at one time, and that was in the other file. And you see right here is your text boundary lines. That's where it fits on the pen, because I think the bottom of the clip, it has a pocket clip. I believe the bottom of the pocket clip is about right here. But this tool layer is our 101 by 101. That is the same size as our base plates. So if you align the edge, if you cut it like I said, you align the edge of the jig with the edge of the plate, and then all you have to worry about is placement left to right. And you can kind of get an idea of where that's going to be. You know, here the right edge kind of lines up where the pen starts to curve around to a point. So you just glue it together, you can put it like that, and then set your pens in. So then once this is made, you won't need the dot anymore, because the dot will already be on it when you made it the other way. And you won't need this cutout, because the cutout will have been done. All you need is to have a text line up in this area. So you can place any text you want, any font you want. You can move it around as long as it's between that line and that line and centered in the pen vertically, which is simple enough. Shift click, center vertically, and it's there. You know, same with this one. We can move it anywhere we want, center vertically, and it's right in the center. And then you can use your arrow keys or whatever to move it side to side as needed. So when you go to cut it, when you go to cut it, just place your text in, make sure your settings are right for your text, frame it up, and go. And here I'll show you. We got a couple pens set up in the jig, and I'll show you what it looks like as they frame, so you can see how perfectly they line up for this. Here I'm just running a name over one of the pens at real low power, just enough so you can see the laser beam, but we're not actually engraving anything on here. But you can see how perfectly the beam aligns up with the pen, and how easy it is to get them lined up for repeated markings. And now we're going to move on to showing the key tags. You see, same thing. We have made a tool layer, 10160. When you go to cut this out initially, these graphics won't be here. Hide those. So when you bring this in initially, and the dot will already be there, so we don't need to show the dot. You will take the shape of your key fobs, place them however you want on your jig, as long as they stay within the tool layer. You're fine. Within the tool layer, place one of the plates inside the jig, cut it out using absolute coordinates as always. That's every time absolute coordinates. Cut them out, and then you can place your graphics, however you want them. Line it to where it looks good. Line it to where it looks good. And then you can, once you have that made, you take this, turn it into a tool layer. So now that'll never output, and you always know, this is where the key ring is going to be, and this is the wooden part that you can engrave. Just show how one of those lines up. This is just doing a rubber band frame of the graphic on the key tag. And there again, we're doing the same thing here with these little dog bone pet tags. You know, you take your black layer, do the cutout. Once the cutout's done, turn that into a tool layer, and then you can bring your graphics in and frame it up. And here we're framing one of the tags. Here again, you can see how nicely the graphic frames to the little dog bone. This is for the wooden hang tag. And he made a couple of finger cutouts to get the wooden piece out when you're done with that as well. Make it easier. But same process every time. You place your 4x4 piece inside the jig. You take your outline of whatever you're doing. You make that cut. This won't be there. You just make the cut of that in the plate. Once that's done, turn it to a tool layer. Place your graphics. Go ahead and frame it. And make your burn. And then lastly, we're doing just a coaster. Now this, it can be either a round coaster or a square coaster. These are both already tool layers. There's nothing to cut out. You just physically place the coaster inside the 4-inch square, and you can center it by eyeball. That's usually close enough for anyone's purposes. If the round coaster is, instead of being 101 millimeters, if it's only, say it's only 90 millimeters, well, keeping to the left corner, let's change this to 90. So now it shrunk it down to the actual size, but then you will register the corners of the coaster on the bottom and the left side, and then just send your graphics accordingly. Do that and bullseye it, and now this new center point is right there. And just because of the way the text is, this would probably look better if we were not quite centered. Here, if you look on the right side, you can see how the coaster doesn't fill the framing totally, but it's registered against the front and the left-hand sides. I'll put a link to the files down in the description. We'll have the fixturing system and the plate inserts and a couple of the jig files as well that you can download and play with on your machine, and just use your imagination with it. Take the projects, the items that you engrave, and figure out how to adapt those to this jig system. The best thing about jigs is the repeatability factor. It's just so easy. Once you have it set up, just flop it in and go. The iCube is a cute little, reasonably priced laser that you can take with you to craft shows and events and things like that. I think that this jig increases its usability, especially if you're doing like the little pet, you're at an event and you have the pet tags, you can just in a matter of minutes, put Fluffy's name on there and the contact number or whatever the owner wants on there, slap it in the jig, let it engrave, and a few minutes later, they're ready to go right there on site. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.